whole month we celebrating how Krishna was bound by Mother Yashoda. It was not the ropes, love personified of Mother Yashoda. So Sanatana Goswami, he actually is, first of all, is presenting that in the month of Kartik, one should worship Lord Krishna by daily reciting the prayers spoken by Sage Satyavrata Muni. So this particular prayer, this Damodarastakam, which we are singing on a regular basis, is not something new, is not something which was created a couple of years ago, decades or even 100 years ago, but actually it's been around for millennia. And this is narrated in Hari Bhakti Vilas. So here we can see the verse number 1. Obviously, here in Bhaktivedanta Mana, every morning and every evening, we recite these wonderful prayers. So I'm just going to read the English translation. To the Supreme Controller who possesses an eternal form of blissful knowledge, whose glistering earrings swing to and fro, who manifests himself in Gokul, who stole the butter that the gopis kept hanging from the rafters of their storerooms, and who then quickly jumped up and ran in retreat in the fear of Mother Yashoda, but was ultimately caught. To that Supreme Lord, Sri Damodar, I offer my humble obeisances. So what we're going to do, we're going to divide this session in two sections. The section number 1 will be slightly touching about the tattva, about the philosophy behind reciting the prayers of Damodarastakam. And the second part, we're going to offer into beautiful narration of Shiva Maharaj in his book Damodar Janani, which is actually very sweet and very mellow. And in this series, we're going to understand how depth of love of God is not something mundane, but rather of something of a very deep and very profound love between object and someone who offers the love. So here we can see that Sanatana Goswami, in the beginning of his on his commentary on the Damodarastakam, he emphasizing this internal and this first sentence, Namami, or basically I bow down. So the author and the commentator are emphasizing that to actually enter into the lila, enter into the understanding of the pastime, it's not an ordinary pastime which happens between mother and a child. It's not just an ordinary pastime where there are tears, where there's fear, where there's some level of punishment, where there's some sort of a mundane approach. But rather the authors, they both understand that this is a very divine lila, which is uniquely presented to us. Therefore, the initial and the first approach is, I offer my most respectful obeisances before I enter the narration and deeper understanding of this beautiful lila. So there are different levels and different layers to actually understanding of this pastime. Sanatana Goswami is presenting in this first initial verse something which you call Vishesha. Vishesha means excellence. He's emphasizing and understanding that the Lord is excellent on many beautiful levels. So what we see as just a beautiful poetry or beautiful verse actually is a very profound statement. So from the initial level, from the level of the tattva. So tattva basically means philosophy or truth. So from the perspective of truth, even when we engage into these beautiful pastimes, in the back of our head, we should always remember and always understand that this is the supreme personality of Godhead. So the excellence of the Lord's truth is presenting that here is the Supreme Lord, and here is the supreme servant of the Lord, which embodies the mood of a mother. Basically, Mother Yashoda, she understood that this is my son, this is not the Lord. And therefore, the tattva presents that when we engage in this pastime, we should be always aware of these points. Another point is Rupa Vishesha, the excellence of his beauty. So the Lord's beauty is obviously very beautiful and very attractive. And there are varieties of markings which we called lakshanas. So on the Lord's body, there are many, many lakshanas which are identifying the divine position of the Lord. The shape of his neck, the depth of his belly, the arms, and obviously the lotus eyes. lips, forehead, and varieties of other lakshanas, markings on the legs, markings on the foot, and markings on the hands of the Lord. Parivara Vishesha are actually interesting because they're presenting that the Supreme Lord is not just an individual, or Krishna is not an individual, but all these attributes and the beauty is manifesting in correlation and in unique relationship with his family. So the Lord is also known as Nanda Nandana, is known as Yashoda Nandana, is known as Gopi Priya. The Lord has many different varieties of names which are in connection with his many intimate and beautiful devotees. And the excellence of Leela represents that how these pastimes are uniquely attractive. So some of the acharyas headed by Vishwan Chakravarti Thakur, they're actually saying that these Leelas, when the Lord descended, he haven't performed Leela only for his immediate pleasure and for the immediate pleasure of his surrounding, but simultaneously by us absorbing ourselves in these Leelas for many, many generations and for many generations to come, the same absorption, the same quality of purification is available. So for those who listen to these pastimes, they simultaneously receive a lot of beautiful benedictions. And now I'm going to read from some of the extracts of the book of the Damodar Janani. So this is one of the interesting concepts, or one of the interesting things what happened in the particular pastime is there's this unique narration of two birds. These two birds are actually sitting and observing this whole pastime. So these two birds been discussing actually the tears of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They've been discussing that how is it possible that the Lord is presenting this Leela or this pastime of shedding tears. So this is what is mentioned. There is no doubt that sometimes in order to get his way, Krishna cries false tears. But this time, he is crying because he remains hungry. Who can blame a child for that? Shari continued her defense. Whatever we may think, Krishna's anger arises from his innermost mind, and the subsequent tears are as factual as the truths of the Puranas. Why would he have false tears when there is no one here to see them? To check that no one was present, the birds looked this way and that. It was true. There was no one other than Krishna and his rising anger. Indeed, the atmosphere seemed to crackle with tension in the way that air sparks during a thunderstorm. Then there was another bird which arrived in the setting, and that was an owl. The owl blinked to affirm the truth of what he had heard. And while Shari conclusions seemed to quell all dispute, a young songbird from Mathura raised the question that waxed the others. So this is another interesting thing, that all these different birds, they've been residents of Vrindavan, and they have a special vision and special observation when they've been looking at these pastimes of Krishna. But this another bird, the bird came from Mathura, which means there's a completely different bhava, completely different rasa. So the bird was saying, from scriptures we know that the Lord is always satisfied within himself, and that he knows neither hunger nor thirst. Dear friends, is it not contradictory to say Krishna is hungry or angry? The local birds were disturbed by this intrusion, but Shuka pacified them with a nod. After all, it was their duty to bring Raja's visitors to a higher stage of understanding. Deferring the wisest of them, Shuka nodded towards the owl, who replied, Who do you think Krishna is? A bit uncertain, the songbird looked at Krishna and then at the birds. He is the Supreme Lord. Having assumed the innocent form of a child, he is now pretending to be dissatisfied and angry in order to nourish the parental love of Mother Yashoda. So we can see how there is a different contradictory mood from the bird of Mathura to the birds of Vrindavan. The birds of Vrindavan, they completely forgotten the Supreme Lord's omnipotency and being the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They just understand that look, right in front of us is a child. It's a young boy. So in this section, there's this whole churning of emotions. There's one very beautiful pastime where Mother Yashoda was meditating so intensely on baby Krishna lying in the crib, lying in the baby bed. And she was thinking that, is Krishna actually still sleeping? Or is Krishna actually within my heart and within my mind? So when mother sees some kind of a paraphernalia of a child, immediately emotions, they come. So Mother Yashoda was constantly meditating on Krishna. So here in this section, as you can see in front of us, in front of you in the PowerPoint, Lasanti, the swinging of his earrings. So it indicates that the swinging of the earrings, Krishna became the decoration of his decoration. That Sanatana Goswami is presenting the point that not only these earrings are personalities, but their perfection was by decorating or being decorated by the Lord's body. Another point is Gokula. He manifested his Swabhavika Shobha. Swabhavika Shobha basically means that his natural propensity, his natural position. So in many different traditions, many different denominations, when Lord is glorified, he's glorified in his Aishwarya Bhav. He's glorified as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is glorified, the one sitting on the throne, the one with the, whose glance can see everyone and everything. But here, this land of Gokul offers the perfect opportunity for the Lord to take Swabhavika Shobha, to be actually in his natural position, to be the son of Mother Yashoda, Nanda Maharaj, to be the friend of the cowherd boys and the lover of the gopis. And this last point, Atyanta Tato Drutya, which is mentioned in the first verse, is identifying or showing the beauty of the love, that how the Supreme Lord, Supreme Personality of Godhead, is running away from Mother Yashoda, but he can't really run far away because he always is captured from behind by Mother Yashoda. So in the continuation of the pastime, in the Damodar Janani, this pastime of destroying the pots, the clay pots, the acharyas are mentioning, on the previous day, Krishna had collected some stones from the courtyard and brought them into the house. His lotus eye now fell on a small pointed stone that was part of a broken pestle. Reaching down, he artfully held the stone like a dagger and then struck the bottom of the churn with the pointed edge. Once, twice. Meanwhile, Mother Yashoda had removed the pot of milk and was fussing over the stove to lower its heat. Krishna cast a guilty glance in her direction. Nothing that she had not heard him remained preoccupied. He struck again, thrice. The pot cracked neatly in two with just the slightest sound. Pleased with his own antics, Krishna betrayed himself with a mischievous smile. The sound of the breaking churn resembled the Brahmana's chant of Swaha as they pour libations on the sacrificial fire. The splatting of yogin and butter resembled their subsequent prayer, Idam Krishnaya, Idam Namama. And then churning rubbing against the pillar was the tinkling sound of the bell Brahmana's ring during the food offering of the Lord. So here in this pastime of Krishna destroying or breaking the pot, we actually can see how it's not just a mundane thing, but it's actually culmination of all the Vedic tradition and all the Vedic wisdom. And we can practically see, we can practically meditate that when these pastimes are happening and when we perform our devotional duties and devotional practices, we can see how they're very neatly and very much connected with actual pastimes happening in Vrindavan. So next time when you ring a bell, when you're doing an offering, you should know that this bell represents the Vedas. And whenever the Supreme Lord takes his offerings, the bells are always ringing. So if you remember in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a section where the gopis, just to hear Krishna stealing butter, they actually put bells on the ropes.
Oh.
And Krishna, when Krishna entered these rooms where all the yogurts and pots being stored, he actually instructed all the bells that from now on you will be quiet. You cannot speak, you cannot ring, because I am the Supreme Lord and I instruct you so. But the moment the Lord started taking the butter and yogurt, the bells, they went crazy and they started ringing. And Krishna said, I said to you that you should not be ringing. Yet the bells said, but my dear Lord, whenever you're taking an offering, it's our duty, it's our dharma to always produce a sound. So Krishna was satisfied with that answer. So I had a few other points which I would like to mention to you. This is, for instance, in a reference to Mother Yashoda's butter, how it actually felt, how it actually tasted. Krishna was asking, was it butter? No, it was more like Mother Yashoda. And the combined impact of these sensations seemed to bring Yashoda into Krishna's presence. And for a moment, he panicked, thinking that she had entered the storeroom. Then, regaining his composure, Krishna continued to savor the butter. But, as usual, he restrained himself from eating too much. If I overeat, then the effect of this butter will subdue me, make me submissive to mother, and bring this pastime to an end. That was the reason he always stole the neighbor's produce and not his mother's. Yashoda's dairy was so saturated with her incomparable love that it would immediately bridle him and bring him under her control. Such an outcome will be incompatible with his pastimes. So here we know one of the pastimes why Krishna was stealing the butter of his neighbors, because the moment he was stealing or eating the butter of his made by Mother Yashoda, he immediately becomes subdued by her love. It would mean no more stealing and no more mischief. Since the neighbor's produce lacked the intensity of Yashoda's love, it lacked the same controlling power. He could therefore freely plunder their homes without fear of becoming a docile booder and the laughingstock of his friends. But this morning, Krishna's anger insulated him from the domesticating effects of his mother's butter. So here we can see that it's not the yogurt and the butter became the medium of carrying the love of his devotees. So just like we desire to be under control of the Supreme Lord, here is Krishna being and actually admitting to be under the spell of his devotees. No other tradition, no other philosophy is actually presenting this level of intimacy. No other tradition is able to present that the Lord is subdued by the love of his devotees. So that's a very beautiful section. That's a very beautiful part, and explains very nicely how the Lord is not just the supreme controller, but he's also being supremely controlled. And he's not by a butter, not by a milk, and not by dairy products, but is by the love which they are prepared. So in this month of Damodar, more than anything, we appreciate the love and the intensity by which we can control and subdue the Lord. That's why the process of bhakti is actually so difficult to obtain and so difficult sometimes to participate in, because it's not only bhakti, but we are receiving opportunity to actually bind the Lord by our love. So in the verse number 2, in continuation, this is translation. Upon seeing his mother's whip and stick, he cried and rubbed his eyes again and again. with his two lotus hands. His eyes were fearful and his breathing quick. And as Mother Yashoda bound his belly with ropes, he shivered in fright and his pearls necklace shook. To this Supreme Lord Sri Damodar, I offer my respectful obeisances. So in this beautiful section, we can see that here he is, the fear of fear personified, Supreme Personality of Godhead, Master of Brahma, Master of Shiva, Master of all the great kings, all the great sages, Master of all the creation himself. And he's presenting lakshanas or indicators which are showing us that he's afraid. He's under the spell of fear. Everyone is afraid of time. Everyone is afraid of many things. But here, the fear personified is afraid of the stick of his mother. And the Acharyas are commenting that this is not just the fear which he's presenting, but rather it's an actual pastime. This is how he actually feels like. So I'm going to read an interesting section again from this book, which is very beautiful. This is when Krishna was caught by Mother Yashoda, and this is when he understood that the desire of Mother Yashoda is actually to bind him. So Krishna, on many occasions, he's sometimes presenting his omnipotency as the Supreme Lord, and on some occasions, he's fully immersed in the Balya Leela, in the Leela of him being a child. So this is when this sort of a dissonance here, this is when these two are clashing, this is when these two Bhabas are colliding. Krishna understood what was on her mind. She is not tying me down, and definitely not to that. But she was. Mother Yashoda was not about to entertain any more nonsense. Forcibly dragging Krishna the few steps to the mortar, she said, "Since you are so fond of mortars, I will marry you to this one. You will be tethered like an elephant calf. Let the wedding begin." But that was easier said than done. And where was the rope with which to tie him? In her hair. With a graceful movement of her left hand, Yashoda Devi took a golden cord that bound her braid at its root and dangled the silken tie in front of Krishna. Arching her lovely eyebrows, she shot a piercing glance at him, which he returned with 10 of his own. Was he like Daksha, to be bound at the neck by a rope? Did she really think he was docile baby elephant? Yashoda paused momentarily to consider which part of him to bind. Certainly not his wrist or calves. That will cause him pain. And his hands and feet were small enough so that he could wiggle free. He would have to be bound firmly. But how? At the waist, chuckled Yashoda. Well tied around the belly. Your chubby behind and scheming head will not allow a rope to slip free. She giggled at her joke. That was not funny, he thought. Krishna didn't know whether to scream or cry. She humiliated him in this way. Just because I'm her son does not mean that I take birth. And just because I look like a human does not mean that I am mortal. Both time and death fear me. Does she not? No, she did not. Krishna's real identity was certainly beyond the range of sense perception. That is why he is called Adhokshaja. But Mother Yashoda's mind and senses were sanctified with thousands of feelings of love for her son. Those feelings made it impossible for her to think of him other than as a toddler and as her son. How could she fear him? She could not recognize his greatness. I am Vibhu, infinite. How does she propose to tie me? But the same motherly affection did not allow Yashoda Devi to think of Krishna as being infinite. However, the truth was that while Krishna felt very finite, when cuddled in her arms, he was simultaneously very unlimited. In trying to bind Krishna without his consent, Mother Yashoda would experience that unlimited nature of his. So this is a very beautiful section. Here we've been reading how Mother Yashoda is not allowed to think about Krishna differently. And Krishna here is in confusion. How dare she binds me? How dare she thinks he can bind me? I'm the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yet this woman is trying to bind me. So interesting thing is, Vaishnava Acharyas, the commentators, are actually presenting that the interaction between Krishna and Mother Yashoda, there's another personality. And that is Yogamaya, the supreme potency of the Lord, the pleasure-giving potency of the Lord. And what is she doing? Yogamaya is adjusting the setting, and even she permits or she doesn't permit for Krishna to utilize certain siddhis, certain mystical powers. So there's a section again in this book saying that Krishna was running towards the mortar, chased by Mother Yashoda. And in a moment, he desired to manifest his anima siddhi, his siddhi, his mystical power, to become very, very minute and very, very small. And in this pastime, Krishna wanted to enter the atom, one of the atoms of the mortar. And he, in a split moment, he started meditating on the anima siddhi, and he invoked this anima siddhi. And he said, okay, now make me small so I can enter the atom. And the anima siddhi was personified. She was like, my dear Lord, I can't. I actually can't do this. I'm not able to trespass over the intensity of love of Mother Yashoda. It's not possible for me to be commanded by you at this point. Because of love of Mother Yashoda is of such a great intensity that I am not able to be utilized. Therefore, my Lord, please forgive me, as I will not be manifested by you at this point. So we can see that there are many beautiful intricacies happening in the pastimes of Yashoda Krishna. And the beauty of these pastimes is that love is a overwhelming and overpowering factor in all the pastimes of the Lord. This was again utilized, and this will be in the later stages mentioned in the Krishna book and the Srimad Bhagavatam, when when the cowherd boys been entering the mouth of Agasura. And the cowherd boys, they had such a desire to be saved by Krishna that Yogamaya, again, Krishna wanted to shout to the cowherd boys, don't go inside, don't go inside. But Yogamaya cancelled the intensity of Krishna's voice, because the mood of the cowherd boys to be saved was much more greater than Krishna's desire to shout and to warn them. So with this said, that was a small presentation for your pleasure of the dear Vaishnavas. One thing I definitely recommend for you to reading this book, Damodar Janani by Shira Maharaj, because it has such a beautiful narrations and very deep, esoteric and wonderful loving relationship, which we on many occasions are not even aware of. So thank you for your wonderful time. We didn't have capacity to go in depth that much, but I tried to present a few points on both of the verses, but try to focus more on the Leela pastime. On the Leela, because Leela is that which nourishes and touches our heart, but a bit of tattva, a bit of philosophy always needs to be present, just so we are not necessarily always sentimental about it. But these pastimes are very overwhelming, very beautiful, and there's tremendously much happening in all these things. It's not just that Krishna got captured and tied to a mortar. There was a series of great emotions, great tribulations, great intensity, great meditations, great manifestations of Lord's supremacy, and even greater manifestations of how Lord can be subdued by the love of his devotee, namely Mother Yashoda. So thank you so much for your wonderful time. If devotees have any questions, any points, any notes, and anything they wish to share, kindly do let me know. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna and Tanga Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much on behalf of School of Bhakti for facilitating this session. I'm sure many of you guys will be aware of who Antaranga Prabhu is. He's at the Brahmachari Ashram and Bhaktivedanta Mana. He's been there since 2015. So as you can see, his love for the philosophy is very contagious. So if you do have any questions, I think Raj Prabhu has a question. Feel free to raise your hand or drop it in the chat and we can ask Antaranga Prabhu for you. Raj Prabhu, do you want to unmute and share your question?
Hey Krishna, Prabhu, thank you so much for that wonderful class. Please accept my humble obeisance, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. I was intrigued by the one of the last comments that you made about Yogamaya was unable to act, and you said something about not acting in this month. I didn't quite catch what you said. I wonder if you could explain.
I think what I was referring to, the Yogamaya, her main mission or her main duty and main service is to enhance the loving relationship between Krishna and his devotees. And she has such a tremendous power that she can even sort of neglect desires, immediate desires of the Lord for the higher desire or for the higher pleasure. So if Krishna desires something immediately, like speak or invoke his potencies, his shaktis, or to do something which to a certain degree may break the flow of the Leela, then Yogamaya is fully allowed and fully equipped to block that desire of Krishna for the higher principle of greater enjoyment. So that was the main point which I was trying to convey.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for explaining that, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, any other comments or thoughts or questions? Feel free to, we've got about a couple of minutes left. If anyone has any other questions.
Hare Krishna Antaranga Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances, all grace to Srila Prabhupada. This is such a wonderful narration. Guru Maharaj's, Shivaram Maharaj's from the book from Shivaram Maharaj. I was reading last night about this. You know, those two birds were talking themselves and how they are analyzing the whole thing. It started with when Mother Jashoda put him in the floor, you know, instead of feeding him, he went to, and it's all just those birds. They were just analyzing the whole thing so nicely. Actually, that started off binding at the end, you know, because it was his desire to have the relationship with the devotee, and he wants to display that, you know, he's a person. So I don't know how other people think, you know, God is impersonal and all these things. Only the Vaishnava philosophy can, you know, give these wonderful, you know, the literature for us to be connected to Krishna so nicely. So this pastime is just so wonderful. And you sort of, your mood and, you know, the way you deliver the whole lecture, it was really very heart touching. Thank you so much. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, as Mataji mentioned, it's actually it's amazing how the most greatest celebration or the greatest celebration in the Hare Krishna movement is the one which celebrates that Lord is a person and how uniquely attractive that Bala Leela is, and how Mother Yashoda is able to sort of bound down the Lord, not by robes, but by love. So I think it's very important for us also to identify that this is there for a reason. 1 month of celebration, God is a person, is there for a good reason. So yeah, thank you for bringing that one out. I definitely recommend you to read this book, Damodar Janani by Shira Maharaj, because it just brings completely different perspective on the Supreme Lord. So thank you so much for your kind patience, for your time, for tolerating me. I hope it was pleasing to the Vaishnavas. I hope your meditation and your depth in this very auspicious month will be growing exponentially day by day. And remember, please, that it's not about offering a lamp, but it's an act of coming together and celebrating the uniqueness and personal features of the Lord. So, yeah, meditate as much as you can on these beautiful pastimes and see if together we can bound Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much once again, Antaranga Prabhu. So we have these sessions every Friday for this month of Kartik. And next week we have Harikanta Mataji all the way from Kenya logging in to deliver the session. And then following that, we have Smara Hari Prabhu and then Alvevia and Sankirtan Priya Prabhu to deliver the final session. So please do all join every Friday at 7:45 to 8:30. And because at School of Bhakti, we like to do everything 1,000 times more, we've actually got a reading challenge, which is starting in the next 5 minutes. So if you are interested in joining our 15-minute reading challenge throughout the month of Kartik, where we're reading the Bhagavad Gita, I'll drop the Zoom link in the chat. Feel free to join. And as Antaranga Prabhu said, this month is about coming together and sharing the wonderful pastimes of the Lord. So we thought we'll do another offering as well straight after this to get us all ready for the month of Kartik as well. So thank you once again, and we'll share the recording straight after this session. Thank you, Antaranga Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.